Pathetic retirement fund, Harry scoffed. His ego filling the room. Little did he know, I'd been hiding a $12 million inheritance, waiting for the perfect moment to shatter his arrogance. As he tried to humiliate me in front of my daughter, he had no clue this family dinner would turn into the ultimate inheritance reveal. But the real shock. Even Priska didn't know I was testing her loyalty all along. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments section where you are listening from. The memory of clinking crystal against fine porcelain still rings in my ears. A discordant counterpoint to Harry's subsequent words. Priska's Sunday roast felt more like a battleground than a shared meal, the culinary centerpiece failing to span the ever-widening gulf between us. As usual, Harry, my son-in-law with his gleaming smile and patronizing tone, had veered the conversation toward finances, or, more precisely, my perceived lack thereof. His probe began subtly, a thinly disguised inquiry about my post-retirement plans. "So, Frank," he drawled, swirling the wine in his glass, the claret catching the light like a predatory gleam. "How's that sunset retirement shaping up? Yacht all picked out?" Priska offered a warning glance, but Harry, emboldened by the wine and a deep-seated need for validation, pressed on. "Priska mentioned your dedicated years at the hardware store. Must have amassed a considerable nest egg selling widgets and screws." The resulting laughter, strained and mirthless, grated on me. I tried to deflect, murmuring about contentment, about having enough. But Harry wouldn't relent. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a stage whisper, as if sharing forbidden knowledge. "Content? Be real, Frank. We all know hardware clerks aren't rolling in dough. You're likely depending on Social Security and Priska's generosity to stay afloat." He chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. "Frankly, it's a tad pitiable." That word hung, thick and heavy, in the air. Pitiable. I saw him for what he truly was, not Priska's beloved, but an empty vessel, desperately trying to fill the void with riches, influence, and the approval of others. A judgment I'd sensed simmering beneath the surface for years, a fear made manifest. To hear it uttered so casually, so cruelly, by this leech attached to my daughter. It landed like a sucker punch. Priska, God bless her, tried to intercede again, but Harry dismissed her with an airy wave. "No, darling, Frank needs a reality check. This world rewards the ambitious, the go-getters. And let's face it, Frank's barely keeping his head above water." He then had the gall to suggest, loud enough for me to hear, that Priska needed to seriously consider the implications of supporting a dependent father. "It's not fair to our future, love," he said, a saccharine coating on his voice. "We need to prioritize. Perhaps it's time for a frank discussion about boundaries." I stared at him, the blood surging in my temples. The roast chicken, once tempting, now felt like lead in my stomach. A man measuring worth by ledgers and postcodes, utterly devoid of the values that truly mattered, compassion, integrity, and empathy. How could Priska be so blind? Was she so hungry for security that she would compromise her own heart, her own kin? I forced a calming breath, stifling the rising tide of fury. I refused to grant him the satisfaction of a meltdown. I wouldn't let him triumph. Not tonight. I simply rose, the scrape of my chair against the hardwood floor slicing through the sudden silence. "I should be going," I announced, my voice remarkably firm. "Thank you for the meal, Priska." I avoided eye contact with Harry, unwilling to witness the smugness etched on his face. Grabbing my coat, I walked to the doorway and exited. The reverberation. That's the detail that stays with me. The seismic crash as the door slammed behind me, a decisive end to years of suppressed animosity. It wasn't me who delivered that final blow, but Harry, after following me to the threshold for a parting shot. "Don't let the door smack you on the backside, loser," he yelled, venom dripping from his words. The sound echoed through the night, a final, brutal declaration. It was the sound of a Rubicon crossed, a bridge incinerated. It was the sound that demolished the facade of cordiality, exposing the malignancy beneath. And it was the sound that hardened my resolve. He wouldn't get away with this. He wouldn't denigrate me, he wouldn't manipulate my daughter, and he wouldn't tear our family apart. Not on my watch. Factory days. The October air clawed at my skin as I trudged onward, each exhalation a fleeting cloud against the dull sky. Harry's cutting words, dripping with scorn, looped in my thoughts. Dependent, he'd sneered. A freeloader. The crunch of gravel under my boots was a metronome ticking me back to the plant. A greasy, metallic tang drifted up from the past, clinging to the back of my throat. 16 years chained to that grimy floor, 16 years of protesting muscles and burning grit in my eyes. The relentless din of the machinery, a pulsating drone that wormed its way into your very soul, still surfaced in the quiet of my nights. Landing that job. I recalled the explosion of pure, unadulterated joy. It wasn't glamorous, heaven knew, but it was a lifeline. A means to an end. Sarah's face, luminous with hope, appeared in my mind as she squeezed me tight. We did it, Frank, she breathed, emotion roughening her voice. We're going to be okay. Okay. We'd surpassed that. We'd scrimped, saved, and surrendered comforts. Every overtime stint, every missed holiday, every penny squirreled away, all channeled toward Priska. Toward her future. We wanted her to grasp opportunities we'd only glimpsed, to have a catalogue of choices. Harry, cushioned by privilege and casual grace, wouldn't fathom such devotion. He likely pictured money as a renewable resource, springing from the manicured grounds of his family's estate. He'd remained untouched by the bone weariness after wrestling a stubborn machine all day, the gut-twisting frustration of deadlines missed, the cold fear that the factory doors might shutter. I recalled one particular Christmas. Priska couldn't have been more than 8. Sarah and I were stretched to our limit just handling basic expenses, never mind the doll she pined for. So Sarah took on clandestine sewing projects, toiling into the wee hours, her eyes raw with fatigue. That Christmas morning, Priska's face ignited as she tore into the gift, a modest imitation of the coveted toy, yet Sarah had crafted a stunning dress for it herself. Flawless. Harry would remain oblivious to affection like that, to such fierce commitment. He'd simply purchased the most extravagant plaything available, entombed in layers of glossy paper, without a second thought. Sarah. A dull ache throbbed in my chest. Her quiet courage, her steadfast optimism, her talent for unearthing joy in the smallest corners of life. She'd toiled just as relentlessly as I had, juggling her duties at the library with raising Priska and nurturing our humble abode. She warranted far more than fate had allowed. The cancer had swept in without warning, a savage thief. It stole her in months, leaving a void that could never truly mend. The factory work, the brutal hours, the compromises, all seemed hollow without her to share them. But I carried onward. For Priska. I longed to do her proud, to keep Sarah's spirit alive. I'd squirreled away what I could, made shrewd investments, intending to secure a comfortable future for myself and, perhaps, pave an easier road for Priska. And now this. Harry, dismissing my life, demeaning my past. Treating me like some pitiable handout. The audacity. My fist tightened. No. He wouldn't prevail. He wouldn't wound Priska, nor would he defile Sarah's memory. I'd fought tooth and nail for far too long to allow him to saunter in and take our legacy for granted. My pace quickened, resolve solidifying in my core with each step forward. He believed he knew me, believed he'd pigeonholed me as a pathetic relic with nothing to offer. He was mistaken. Profoundly mistaken. A suitable place. The phone rang, a shrill interruption to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. I almost didn't answer. Since Harry's visit, a heavy cloak of unease had settled over the house, suffocating the familiar comfort I usually found within its walls. But it was Priska. I had to answer. Dad? Her voice was hesitant, a delicate thread stretched thin. Priska, love. How are you? I tried to inject some warmth into my tone, but the chill lingered. I'm fine. Listen, Dad, Harry and I were talking, here it comes, I thought. And we were thinking about your house. My grip tightened on the phone. The silence on the other end throbbed with unspoken words. The chipped paint on the kitchen wall seemed to mock me. Thinking about my house. What about it? I asked, keeping my voice level. Well, she continued, the thread fraying, it's a big place, Dad. Just for you. And it's quite far from everything. From us, especially. I pictured her in their pristine, minimalist apartment, all glass and steel and carefully curated art. A world away from my cluttered, cozy haven. Are you saying you want me to sell it? The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Not, exactly. We just thought, maybe, it might be a good idea for you to consider downsizing. Finding somewhere, more suitable. Suitable. The word hung in the air, dripping with Harry's condescension. I could practically hear him dictating the conversation, pulling the strings of my daughter's good heart. Suitable for what, Priska? For who? I asked, the quiet hum of the refrigerator now a deafening roar in my ears. She sighed, a fragile sound. Dad, don't be like that. We just want what's best for you. It would be easier for us to help you out if you were closer. And Harry was saying, you could probably get a good price for the house, with the market the way it is. You could put the money to good use. Good use? The phrase stung. Was I not putting the house to good use? Was my life, my history, my memories, not of any value? Dad, please. Don't make this difficult. We just want you to be comfortable. Maybe a nice little condo, with all the amenities. No more yard work, no more leaky roof. I closed my eyes, the image of Sarah tending her roses in the garden flashing before me. The roses were gone now, choked by weeds, but the memory was vivid, a tangible reminder of what I was fighting to protect. Whose idea was this, Priska? I asked, my voice low. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing, shallow and rapid. It was just a thought we had, she finally stammered. A thought they had. Not her. Harry. Always Harry. I see, I said, the words heavy with a sadness that settled deep in my bones. I felt suddenly, acutely, alone. My daughter, once my ally, now a conduit for Harry's insidious influence. The house, once a sanctuary, now a target. I'll think about it, Priska, I said, knowing I wouldn't. Okay, Dad. I love you. I love you too, Priska. I hung up the phone and stared at the wall, the silence amplifying the emptiness within me. The house felt colder now, the shadows longer. I was an outsider in my own life, watching as Harry meticulously dismantled everything I held dear. The seed. The silence after Priska's call was a heavy blanket. Each tick of the grandfather clock in the hall felt like a hammer blow against my skull, driving deeper the wedge Harry had so expertly inserted between my daughter and me. He was good, I'll give him that. Good at manipulation, good at sniffing out weakness, good at turning my own flesh and blood into a puppet dancing to his tune. I wandered into the workshop, seeking solace in the familiar scent of sawdust and oil. It was a cramped, cluttered space at the back of the house, smelling of memory. My father's domain, now mine. He'd spent countless hours here, lost in the intricate world of gears and wires, coaxing life back into broken things. He wasn't a talker, my father. A man of few words, but infinite patience. He could fix anything, from a sputtering lawnmower to a child's broken heart, though the latter was usually accomplished with a wink and a well-placed piece of chocolate. I picked up a tarnished brass gear, its teeth worn smooth with age. He'd salvaged it from an old clock, I remembered, years ago. Waste not, want not, he'd always said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. He saw value where others saw junk, potential where others saw only decay. He was a quiet observer, my father. A listener. He'd sit for hours in his armchair, reading, tinkering, or simply staring out the window at the changing seasons. He wasn't ambitious in the way Harry was. He didn't crave power or prestige. He found contentment in the simple rhythms of life, in the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. Harry would have scoffed at him, called him a failure, a nobody. But my father was richer than Harry could ever imagine, richer in spirit, richer in wisdom. I remembered the day he died. The hospital room was sterile and cold, a stark contrast to the warmth of his workshop. He was frail, his breathing shallow, but his eyes were clear, filled with a knowing light. I held his hand, his grip surprisingly strong. We didn't speak much. There wasn't much to say. We both knew the time was near. Then, his voice, a raspy whisper, barely audible above the hum of the machines. A seed, he'd croaked, his eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the white walls. Planted in secret, blooms the brightest. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. I'd squeezed his hand, puzzled. What do you mean, Dad? He'd just smiled faintly, a ghost of his former self. You'll see, he'd whispered. Then, his eyes had closed for the last time. A seed planted in secret. What seed? What secret? For years, I'd puzzled over those words, turning them over in my mind like a smooth stone. Was it some hidden treasure, buried in the garden? Some long-forgotten love affair? Some secret ambition he'd never pursued? I'd searched for clues, combed through his papers, but found nothing. The words remained a cryptic enigma, a final, unanswered riddle from a man who had always been a mystery to me. Now, standing in his workshop, surrounded by the ghosts of his past, the words echoed in my mind with renewed force. A seed planted in secret. Could it be? No, it was impossible. He never spoke of money, of investments, of anything that hinted at the truth that was revealed to me weeks ago. But still. A flicker of hope ignited within me, a tiny spark in the darkness. Could his cryptic message have been foreshadowing something more, something hidden, something that would change everything? Something that would give me the strength to stand up to Harry, to protect my home, to reclaim my life? The thought was a seed itself, planted in the fertile ground of my despair. I didn't know if it would bloom, but I knew I had to find out. 12 million. The paper cut was a trivial sting, a mere fleeting annoyance compared to the agonizing ache in my soul. Priska's lingering silence on the phone reverberated, a discordant note resonating deep in my core. Another attempt to reach her met with voicemail. Each unanswered chime was a hammer blow to the crumbling edifice of our relationship, courtesy of Harry's machinations. I slumped over Dad's workbench, inhaling the familiar tang of sawdust and linseed, a comforting aroma offering scant solace against the gnawing despair within. My fingertips traced the well-worn contours of his cherished chisel, an instrument he'd employed to liberate beauty from unyielding timber. Now, I was the unyielding one, paralyzed by dread and uncertainty. The mailman's arrival rattled the box, breaking the stillness. Usually, it was just the dregs of modern life, bills and circulars destined for immediate recycling. But today, a weighty, cream-colored envelope emblazoned with a sophisticated legal heading caught my attention. Mitchell and Barnes, attorneys at law, announced itself in discreet, elegant lettering. My pulse quickened. I hadn't needed legal counsel in years. I ripped it open, the paper resisting for a moment, almost unwilling to reveal its secrets. The formal prose swam before me, estate of the late, Elias Thorne, client, Mr. Franklin Thorne. Father. Gone for half a decade, yet his name, stark on the official document, jolted me like a defibrillator. The missive detailed the probate specifics, assets, and ultimately, the reason for their urgent communication. It outlined my status as the sole beneficiary of a trust established by him, a trust utterly unknown to me. A tremor seized my hands as I scanned for the vital figure, the detail that would either confirm fantastical hopes or crush them entirely. Corpus of said trust currently valued at $12 million. 12 million United States dollars, the word swam. $12 million. Impossible. A cruel jest, a misprint, a phantom conjured by grief and worry. I reread it, slowly, deliberately, each syllable a separate drumbeat. $12 million. I collapsed into Dad's ancient, groaning chair, the letter slipping through nerveless fingers to the floor. The workshop seemed to tilt, the familiar tools and unfinished projects blurring into an amorphous haze. My breath caught. $12 million. More than mere money, this was a weapon forged in hope. A bulwark. A lifeline thrown into the abyss. It was the wherewithal to retaliate, to safeguard Priska, to wrest control of my existence from Harry's suffocating influence. The workshop's silence took on a different timbre, pregnant with potential, humming with the echoes of choices waiting to be made. Closing my eyes, I pictured Dad, his lined face hinting at secret knowledge. Had he anticipated this moment? Foreseen the encroaching darkness and secreted this safeguard, knowing when it would bloom? The enormity of the revelation was staggering, burdensome yet liberating. $12 million couldn't erase the sting of Priska's withdrawal, but it armed me to fight for her, to expose Harry's true colors. It was a mandate, a challenge, and an opportunity, all wrapped up in one astonishing sum. I needed to think. To strategize. To discover how to leverage this incredible boon to protect those I cherished, even if they were unaware of their peril. The quiet murmur of the workshop receded as a different sound arose, the barely perceptible, but unmistakable, thrum of impending conflict. A fight I was finally, unexpectedly, prepared to wage. Watching and waiting. The legal document, weighty with 12 million unspoken retorts, felt like a judgment in my grip. 12 million reasons Harry Kensington's gilded existence was about to shatter. Delay was still essential. Priska was captive in his web, mesmerized by the glittering nothings he spun, a tapestry woven with pilfered threads. It was darkly comical, really. I resolved to keep the inheritance as my trump card, concealed until precisely the opportune moment. Premature exposure, while Priska remained enthralled, would only solidify his position, forcing him to entrench himself. Instead, I observed. Harry strutted and preened like a gaudy bird flaunting stolen finery, feathers plucked, of course, from Priska's anticipated inheritance, the ancestral home that was rightfully mine. He staged opulent soirees, the fragile chime of crystal and hollow laughter reverberating, each peal a twist of the knife. "Frank, old boy," he'd purr, his tone a honeyed condescension, "are you certain you wouldn't prefer something simpler? Perhaps something less demanding?" He'd gesture, with an air of dismissal, toward my humble beer, a sad attempt to assert some semblance of normality amid his carefully manufactured reality. The other guests, his hand-picked sycophants, would titter politely, their eyes darting between us, measuring the balance of power. He was relentless in his needling. He'd trap me with inquiries disguised as concern, veiled probes into my retirement plans, each word laced with derision. "You see, Frank, financial prudence is paramount these days. Priska requires stability. She deserves only the best." He'd pause, allowing the unspoken barb to linger, "and you, Frank, are clearly unable to supply it." Resentment brewed, a smoldering ember beneath my placid expression and agreeable nods. It wasn't just the money, though the galling injustice of him squandering what was, in essence, my father's legacy, stoked the flames. It was the way he was refashioning Priska into a showpiece, a hollow reflection of the spirited, independent woman I knew. And the way he regarded me, as though I were a mere irritant on his pristine shoes. One evening, after a particularly excruciating dinner where Harry regaled his audience with tales of his latest, brilliant, venture, financed, naturally, by Priska's dwindling fortune, I sought refuge in the garden. The aroma of roses, usually a source of solace, felt cloying, a reminder of the beauty Harry was slowly tarnishing. I gazed at the stars, each faint spark a silent witness to his elaborate deception. A glacial anger settled within me, my resolve solidifying with each passing sunrise. I refused to let him prevail. I refused to let him shatter my family. He emerged, glass of amber liquid in hand, swirling like liquid gold. "Lovely night, isn't it, Frank?" he mused, his voice smooth as silk, sharp as shattered glass. "Perfect for pondering, legacies." He baited me, savoring my disquiet. I met his eyes, revealing nothing of the secret simmering within. "Indeed, Harry," I responded, my voice even. "Legacies are everything. They shape our identity, and define what we impart." He chuckled, a guttural sound of self-satisfaction. "Precisely. And some legacies," he paused, taking a sip of his drink, "are substantially more impressive than others." He believed he had me cornered. He believed he held all the cards. But he was mistaken. He possessed no inkling of the impending reckoning. The tempest was gathering, and Harry Kensington was about to be utterly consumed. Patience was my only weapon. To observe. To lie in wait. And to orchestrate the perfect moment for its release. Surefire schemes. The clinking of Harry's ice against the crystal glass was a soundtrack to my mounting frustration. He paced before the floor-to-ceiling windows of Priska's living room, the city lights painting fleeting reflections on his perfectly sculpted face. "Honestly, Priska, it's a no-brainer. A complete lock." Priska, perched on the edge of the plush sofa, looked hesitant. "But, Harry, the last venture didn't exactly pan out as planned, did it?" Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. I knew she was thinking of the failed eco-friendly dog food company that had left her inheritance slightly lighter. Harry stopped pacing and flashed her that practiced smile, the one that could charm the birds from the trees. "Darling, that was a minor setback. A learning experience. This, however," he gestured expansively, "is different. We're talking guaranteed returns. Think cutting-edge agricultural technology. Vertical farming in the desert. It's the future, Priska. And we can be at the forefront." I leaned forward in my armchair. Vertical farming in the desert? Sounds like a surefire way to throw good money after bad. Harry's smile vanished. He turned to me, his eyes narrowed. "Frank, with all due respect, stick to gardening. High finance clearly isn't your forte." "Maybe not," I conceded, "but I know a con when I see one. And Harry, this reeks of one." I directed my gaze at Priska. "Honey, be careful. He's pushing too hard." Priska sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Dad, please. Harry knows what he's doing." "Does he, Priska? Or does he just know how to spend your money?" The words hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Harry's face flushed crimson. He took a step towards me, but Priska quickly intervened. "Harry, please. Dad, stop it." She turned to me, her eyes pleading. "Dad, I trust Harry. He's my husband. He would never do anything to hurt me." Her blind faith stung. I wanted to grab her, shake her, make her see the truth that was so glaringly obvious to me. But I knew it was no use. Harry had woven his web too tightly. "Priska," I said, my voice softer now, "just be cautious. Get a second opinion. Talk to someone independent." She offered a weak smile. "I will, Dad. I promise." But I knew she wouldn't. She was already convinced. Harry had already won. Harry, sensing his victory, draped an arm around Priska's shoulders, pulling her close. "See, Frank. Everything's fine. Priska trusts me. We're a team." He gave me a smug look, the kind that made my blood boil. "A team," I echoed, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "Just remember, Priska, a good team respects each other's opinions." They don't pressure each other. Harry laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Pressure. Darling, I'm just offering her an opportunity. A chance to be part of something big. As I watched them, Priska nestled against Harry's side, her expression serene. A chilling thought settled in my mind: this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control. Harry wasn't just after Priska's inheritance, he was after her. And I was running out of time to stop him. Breaking point. The clink of silver against porcelain punctuated the tense silence, a drawn-out moment after Harry's guffaws had faded. His laughter, a grating sound, still echoed, an insult etched onto my soul. He'd been holding court about his latest tech venture, promising riches beyond imagining, prattling on about generational wealth, when his gaze, sharp and calculating, locked onto mine. Of course, Frank, he drawled, condescension dripping from every syllable, this is probably over your head. Enjoying a few lazy rounds of golf and your coupon clipping, are we? Living large on pennies? Priska will be changing your diapers in your dotage. The words landed like poisoned darts. Priska flinched, color flooding her cheeks. Her eyes darted to me, a silent apology etched in their depths, a silent battle between wifely duty and filial affection. I'd weathered years of Harry's barbs and superior airs, all for Priska. I'd swallowed countless indignities as he flaunted his affluence, the ludicrous cars, the overpriced clothes, all bought with unearned money. I had bitten back retorts as he subtly dismissed my experience, casting me as an outdated relic. But this cut deeper. This was a deliberate strike, a public belittling in front of my own flesh and blood. He wasn't just mocking my finances, he was attacking my very essence as a father, as a man. My hands clenched beneath the tablecloth, knuckles bone white. A red haze swam before my eyes, a roaring in my ears akin to a gathering storm. The carefully constructed wall around my anger crumbled. Years of bottled-up resentment, of simmering fury, threatened to engulf me in their wake. A pulse hammered in my temple. I inhaled deeply, striving for composure. I would not afford him the satisfaction of a meltdown. I would not let him break me. I met Priska's gaze, wide with worry, silently imploring me to be still. I offered a ghost of a smile, a silent reassurance. Then, I turned to Harry, my eyes unwavering. You know, Harry, I began, my voice calm despite the tempest within, you're right. I am looking forward to my retirement. And Priska deserves some pampering. She works tirelessly. Harry arched a brow, a smug half-smile playing on his lips. Indeed. I pressed on, ignoring his interruption. So, I've decided to take her on a trip. A proper escape. Priska's surprise was evident. Dad, what on earth are you talking about? I'm talking about whisking you away on a global adventure, sweetheart, I announced, turning to her, my voice warm with affection. We'll see all those places you've always dreamed of. We'll wander through ancient wonders, bask on sun-kissed shores, and lose ourselves in new worlds. Just you and me. Harry's smirk evaporated, replaced by an expression of slack-jawed disbelief. Around the world? That's extravagant. How do you intend to foot that bill on your meager retirement funds? He spat the word meager like a curse. I held his gaze, my eyes reflecting a newfound resolve. Don't concern yourself with the details, Harry. I have it covered. I paused, allowing the words to resonate. And rest assured, we won't be relying on your largesse. The atmosphere thickened, charged with unspoken animosity. Priska's expression was a mixture of confusion and shock. Harry's face was a rigid mask, barely concealing the inferno of his rage. I recognized I had crossed a Rubicon, irrevocably altering the balance between us. But I felt no regret. It was time he understood that he could no longer treat me with impunity. It was time to reclaim my self-respect, to safeguard my daughter, and to finally unveil the truth that had slumbered for too long. The rules of the game had been rewritten. The revelation. The Mediterranean sun beat down on us as we boarded the yacht in Monaco, its polished teak gleaming. Priska was practically vibrating with excitement, snapping pictures of everything: the sapphire water, the crew in their crisp white uniforms, the champagne flutes already chilling on deck. But the image that seared itself into my memory was the one of Harry's face when he saw us off. A mask of polite amusement barely concealing a thundercloud of disbelief. He'd cornered me before we left the hotel, his usual condescension sharper than shattered glass. "Frank, a trip like this? Seriously? How are you even managing this? Don't tell me you've remortgaged the house. Priska shouldn't have to worry about your financial misadventures." I'd simply smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that I knew irritated him more than any argument. "Let's just say I came into a little money, Harry. Nothing for you to concern yourself with." He hadn't bought it, of course. He never bought anything that didn't fit his narrative of my inadequacy. The yacht was a gauntlet thrown at his feet. A direct challenge to his self-proclaimed reign as the family's financial emperor. The first few days of the cruise were bliss. Seeing Priska so carefree, laughing without that pinched worry around her eyes, was worth more than all the money in the world. We explored hidden coves, swam in crystalline waters, and dined on fresh seafood under a canopy of stars. I could feel the years of Harry's subtle belittlement slowly melting away from both of us. Then came the inevitable phone call. We were anchored off the coast of Sardinia, the air thick with the scent of pine and salt. Priska answered, her face lighting up. "Harry. We're having the most amazing time." I busied myself with adjusting the awning, pretending not to listen. But I heard the shift in her tone, the subtle defensiveness creeping in. "Dad wanted to take me away for a bit," she said, her voice tight. He deserves a vacation." A pause. Then, Harry's voice, amplified through the phone speaker, dripping with a saccharine concern that made my skin crawl. "Of course, darling. But I'm just worried about Frank. He's never been one for extravagance. I hope he hasn't done anything rash." That was it. The final straw. I took the phone from Priska, my hand shaking only slightly. "Harry," I said, my voice calm and steady despite the churning in my gut. "I think it's time we had a little chat about my rashness." I walked away from Priska, further down the deck, putting enough distance so that I could speak freely. "Remember when you lectured me about retirement, Harry? About how pathetic my savings were?" He chuckled, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Frank, I was just being realistic." "Realistic? Or deliberately cruel? Doesn't matter. What matters is this: I inherited $12 million, Harry. From my father. And I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to see how long you'd keep up the charade." Silence. I could practically hear the gears grinding in his brain, recalculating his entire strategy. Then, the transformation. It was sickeningly swift. The condescension vanished, replaced by a syrupy sweetness that made me want to retch. "Frank. 12 million. That's fantastic. Why didn't you say anything? We're practically family. We should be celebrating." I cut him off. "Don't insult me, Harry. I know exactly what you are. And so does Priska, or she will soon enough." I ended the call and turned to face my daughter. She was standing a few feet away, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock and confusion. "Dad," she whispered, is that true? 12 million? I nodded. Every word. The next few minutes were a blur of questions, explanations, and a slow, dawning realization in Priska's eyes. She was torn, I could see it. Loyalty to her husband warring with the betrayal she felt at his constant manipulation of both of us. Then, she asked the question I knew was coming. "Did Harry know about this?" "No," I said. "And that's why he acted the way he did." The silence stretched, thick and heavy. The azure sky seemed to darken, the gentle lapping of the waves against the hull suddenly ominous. The revelation had detonated, and the fallout was just beginning. The luxury yacht suddenly felt small and claustrophobic. I braced myself for the storm. Severed ties. The drone of the yacht's engine seemed to amplify the silence hanging between us, thick and heavy as the humid sea air. Priska sat perched on the edge of a cushioned seat, her usual sun-kissed glow dimmed with apprehension. I could practically see the cogs turning in her mind, struggling to reconcile the man she loved with the chillingly opportunistic voice she'd overheard on the phone. Harry's. Upset, she finally offered, a weak defense. I sighed, the salt-laced breeze ruffling my hair. Upset because he thought the gravy train had derailed, only to discover it's still running, just on a different track. I met her gaze, wanting her to truly see him. Priska, I'm not asking you to choose. I'm asking you to open your eyes. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Here's the deal, Priska. I'm willing to try and make this work, for your sake. But there are conditions. Non-negotiable conditions. She straightened, a flicker of her familiar fire returning. What conditions? First, I said, holding up a finger. Harry apologizes. A genuine, heartfelt apology, not some insincere platitude, for his behavior. For the way he's treated me, for the way he clearly sees this family as nothing more than a financial opportunity. Priska's brow furrowed. And if he doesn't? Then he's not welcome in my life. Or on this yacht. Or anywhere near you, if I have anything to say about it. The words felt like lead weights dropping from my tongue. It was a drastic step, but necessary. I had to protect her, even from herself. Her silence stretched, taut and uncomfortable. I could see the internal battle raging within her. Finally, she nodded, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. I understand. I'll talk to him. The next morning, Harry called. I could hear the forced cheerfulness in his voice, the subtle undercurrent of calculation. He asked about the yacht, the weather, anything but the elephant in the room. Harry, I interrupted, cutting through the pleasantries. Priska told you what I said? There was a pause, a barely perceptible hesitation. Yes, Frank. Look, about yesterday. I braced myself. I think you're overreacting. I was just being honest with Priska. Someone had to tell her you weren't exactly rolling in dough. And frankly, a little financial pressure might have motivated you to, be more proactive. My blood ran cold. There it was, the unvarnished truth. He didn't see me as family, he saw me as a project, a potential source of income to be squeezed dry. So, no apology then? I asked, my voice dangerously low. Apology? For what? For speaking the truth. Don't be ridiculous, Frank. That was it. The last vestige of hope, the faint possibility of reconciliation, evaporated like morning mist. Then you leave me no choice, Harry. You're done. Finished. You are no longer welcome in my life, or Priska's. Consider this our final conversation. I hung up, the click echoing in the sudden quiet. My hand trembled slightly as I met Priska's wide, questioning eyes. He refused, I said simply. He doubled down. Relief, mixed with a profound sadness, washed over her face. Then you did the right thing, Dad. She crossed the space between us and took my hand, her grip surprisingly firm. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. For protecting me. For protecting us. In that moment, standing on the deck of my yacht, the sun warm on our faces, I knew I'd made the right decision. I had severed a toxic tie, not just for myself, but for my daughter. And in its place, something stronger, something more genuine, had begun to bloom. A father and daughter, finally free. The sea stretched before us, vast and unknown, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of calm, a sense of hope. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but we would face it together. A blooming seed. The spiced air of Marrakesh, thick enough to taste, was a world away from the icy atmosphere we'd left behind in London. Priska drew in a deep breath, eyes gleaming. "It's incredible, Dad." Relief washed over me as I witnessed a flicker of the girl Harry had been systematically dimming. "Just a taste, sweetheart. The world awaits." Marrakesh's souks became our initiation, a sensory explosion that initially overwhelmed Priska. But it wasn't long before her laughter, a sound painfully absent in recent times, echoed through the labyrinthine alleys as she bartered playfully with a rug merchant. From Morocco, our compass pointed to Thailand, where we volunteered at an elephant sanctuary. She was visibly moved as she helped bathe the gentle giants and learned about their endangered status. "They understand so much, they're so defenseless," she whispered, tucking a stray hair behind her ear, her voice thick with emotion. "It breaks your heart." It was under the Thai sun that my father's inheritance began its quiet work. Funds flowed to the sanctuary, bolstering their infrastructure and expanding their crucial conservation efforts. My father, a man whose quiet philanthropy I deeply admired, believed wealth was a conduit, a responsibility to ease suffering and cultivate positive change. Harry, of course, viewed it as a personal ATM. The contrast stung. As we continued our journey, a pattern emerged, immersion in vibrant cultures followed by a search for ways to contribute, however modestly. A Nepalese school craved textbooks. A rural Indian clinic lacked essential medical provisions. An Amazonian community fought to safeguard their ancestral lands from the relentless march of deforestation. Each act of giving resonated with purpose, a tangible link to my father's legacy that transcended mere monetary transactions. It wasn't about simply writing checks, it was about bearing witness, lending a hand, and amplifying the voices lost in the din. Initially unaware of the scale of my involvement, Priska began to perceive the ripples of our actions. She witnessed the rekindled hope in the eyes of children clutching new books, the profound gratitude etched on the faces of villagers benefiting from improved healthcare. A quiet sense of fulfillment began to blossom within her. Eager to do more, she started independently researching organizations and even launched a fundraising initiative with her London friends to support the very sanctuary where we had worked. I watched, heartened, as she stepped into her own, shaking off Harry's manipulative influence like shedding an old skin. Meanwhile, back in London, Harry undoubtedly fumed. I could almost see him stalking his sterilely perfect apartment, the silence punctuated only by the delicate chime of ice against crystal. He'd anticipated contrition, a return to the familiar pattern of him exploiting our family's resources. Our sudden departure, our very silence, must have been a cataclysmic blow to his towering ego. He likely nursed the delusion that we'd come crawling back, begging for reinstatement into his good graces. He ventured to contact Priska, inundating her with hollow apologies and insincere promises. Her reaction? She simply forwarded them to me, her expression a mixture of amusement and dismissal. "Does he honestly think I'm that naive?" she asked, a touch of disdain in her voice. I imagined Harry scrambling, the carefully constructed facade of his success beginning to crumble. His coterie of shallow admirers, impressed by his perceived wealth and influence, would soon recognize him for what he was, a hollow shell, a parasite thriving on the generosity of others. Let him simmer in his self-made stew of regret and entitlement. Let him come to the belated realization that genuine connection and empathy are worth more than any cache of gold. One evening, on a rooftop in Kyoto, the ancient temples glittering in the distance, Priska turned to me, her gaze clear and resolute. "Thank you, Dad," she said softly, the words heavy with meaning. "For everything. For showing me what really counts." I squeezed her hand, a silent promise passing between us. "We're in this together, sweetheart. Always." The seed of doubt Harry had so diligently planted had withered at last, replaced by a burgeoning sense of self-worth and direction. The world stretched before us, limitless in its possibilities, and for the first time in a long time, a vibrant hope bloomed within me, a future built on family, loyalty, and above all, compassion. Thank you for spending your time with my story. Feel free to share your thoughts or reactions in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.